When we're given a quadratic equation and we're asked to solve for x, as we've seen before, there's usually two answers. But what we haven't seen before is two answers that are complex or have an imaginary I in them. So let's see what happens with this one. First of all, we need to write the quadratic formula. Excuse my singing, but that's how we remember it. So we have x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So what we have to remember is that we have an a is the 2, b is considered the negative 3, and c is a positive 5. So let's fill in our values. I always put parentheses around any substitution number I put in for a letter. So we have negative 3 in this parentheses. We have negative 3 also in this parentheses. A, which is 2, goes in this parentheses, and C, which is 5, goes in this parentheses. All over 2 times the A, which is also 2. The way that I simplify this next is I put x equals the negative 3 is basically the opposite of negative 3, which is positive 3. Then you write plus or minus, and then the square root of, and then what I want you to do is put just what's under the radical in your calculator. Don't put the square root sign, but just put everything you see under the square root sign in your calculator and get a single number answer. You should get negative 31. And then on the bottom, 2 times 2 is 4. Now, negative 31, remember, is the same as negative 1 times positive 31. And what we now know about the square root of negative 1 is that it can be represented with the letter I. So let's rewrite this in its final form, which will be plus or minus I square root of 31 over 4. Now sometimes these can be reduced and sometimes they can't, but 31 is not going to be able to be broken down anymore, so we're going to leave the answer like this. And this is really two different answers. It's 3 plus I square root of 31 over 4, and then the 3 minus I square root of 31 over 4. The final step possibly requires reducing sometimes, but oftentimes requires you to write it in a plus bi form at least. And so if that's the case, we can again split up these into 3/4 plus or minus the square root of 31/4, and then put the I kind of out to the side. Then it looks more like a plus or minus bi. And the plus or minus means that there's really two answers, and remember this is what x is equaling. It's either 3/4 plus the square root of 31/4 I, or 3/4 minus the square root of 31/4 I. And these are technically in the correct complex number form, and those are two separate answers that you could write for x.